So I'm gonna hop off.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good morning. We'll go ahead and get started here in just a couple minutes.
Hi, Evelyn. I'm here.
Okay, it wasn't showing you as an attendee for a second, so I just got you added.
Okay, sorry,
as a
just
co-host.
technical difficulties.
Yes.
I don't know when. You know how it is.
Yes, exactly.
I'll help you with the chat if I see anything coming in.
Okay. All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
we'll go
you.
ahead and get started. It's 11:30. Hi, my name is Evelyn, and I'm a regional data specialist in Nebraska. We cover 18 counties and a little over 95 school districts. And so having a central data collection point is very essential for our project. So what I'm going to cover today is kind of the processes and systems we have in place that help us keep that information together. So I just want to start and let you guys know that we're a relatively new project. We've only been offering services for about a year. I was our first project staff and I've just been here over 2 years. So one of our goals has been to find ways to help our project work together, as well as meeting student needs as efficiently and effectively as possible. I know that all these tools won't work for everyone, as every project works a little different. So there may be some information that applies to you and some information that may not. So the 4 different ways we'll look at the way our project implements this data is specifically within IDNR, how we use it within the data specifically in services, and then how we also use it for coordination and quality control. So once again, it's just that staff collaboration that we're looking for to best serve our students with these systems that we have in place. So I'm just going to kind of walk you through what it looks like when we have a recruiter go out until basically we start serving a student. So we get our referrals through the IDRC refer tool, and we've implemented a system where we actually enter that into Connecting. It's an app that our recruiters are familiar with, and so it's an easy platform for them to navigate. So the first step is that an IDRC referral is completed, and that's information that we send out basically every contact we have. So every letter I send out, the IDRC QR codes on there, and stuff like that. So when a recruiter goes out, well, the referral is submitted through IDRC, and then I or another individual within our program transfers that information to Connect Team. And then the recruiter is responsible to update those entries with the steps that they've completed. And then eventually you'll see the final status. So I'll just go ahead and show you what that looks like on our end. Can you see the new screen, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
thank you. So what this looks like is when a recruiter goes out, or when a recruiter receives this information, you can see that the person who submitted the entry, the date that it was submitted, and then it has the specific information. If you're familiar with the IDRC tool, it's the same information that's on there. Then you can go and it just shows like the town and the county. That's one of the way we track where our recruiters are and where most of our referrals are coming from. And then you can see like any notes that are there, which we've blurred those out. And then you can see the status. So we have a recruiter status and we have an IDR coordinator status. So you can see in the note section that there's a little bit of varying information. So we know that this family, when the recruiter's trying to reach out, we know that that's a WhatsApp number, so it won't go through with a regular phone call. And then in here, you can see that we had a referral. Once this family was contacted, it actually was found out that this family no longer lives in our area, but was in a different county. So all those notes are in there to follow that. And then you can see that it was reassigned here in this status. And it was assigned to a recruiter in a different area. And then the final status, once the contact has been made, you can see that these are new. This one was reassigned. This family was found to be ineligible. And then once they're ineligible or they're accepted or they've moved out of our region, they're marked as archived so that we know that that is completely done. So with Connect Team, there's a couple different ways that you can look at data. They have a data analysis section that's actually on the app that I'll show you in a couple sections later. This is the reports that you can gather that information from. And so we use this. So if you look at the county and towns, this shows us which recruiter was selected, which shows in this column right here. I've deleted that information for privacy purposes, but you can see what recruiters have received the most information, what areas, what time of the year, and the status of those referrals. So then we go, the recruiter makes the family contact, and then they go to complete the COE. One of the systems that we have to identify student needs early, especially for our priority students, is a COE prioritization form. And so when the recruiter's there, they complete this form. So they evaluate different needs. And then with that, we know as soon as the student COE is approved, if they're a priority student, whether they're like PFS or at risk or neither. And then this activity evaluation says if like our service providers need to bring something out on a first visit, you know, if a family maybe needs some food or something like that. And then the documentation piece with that as well. I'll just scroll down here. So we score on a 5-star scale. So a 5-star would be our highest priority, a family who needs services right away. For families that have 4 or 5 stars, we actually do have it set up where our coordinator receives that, because that shows that they have a high level of need. So they receive that right away so we can look at services. If you look at this section, this asks so these are like the McKinney-Vento questions. So is this student homeless? And then this next section will ask what kind of homeless. So if you're familiar with McKinney-Vento, you'll see that is like sharing a residence. Sometimes it may be living in a park, whatever the case may be, so that we can identify what level of services they would need with maybe finding housing or whatever.
Evelyn, do you mind zooming in a little bit? It's a little
On
bit small.
this one here or the next one?
Just the overall,
Okay,
the
all right.
overall screen. Thank you.
Yes, yes. And then on this next one, you can just see the examples of, so this family, they're homeless and they're sharing a house, but there are all the other options for like living in an emergency shelter and items like that, where we may see those students first, depending on those needs. So this is if they're experiencing a high level of need. So this may be a family who is in the process of being evicted. Maybe they don't have any food, clothing for the appropriate weather, things like that. And so then the next list is the items that the family would actually need. So sometimes it may be like laundry soap or something like that that they're not able to get somewhere else. That's just an example. So this family, it's just reiterating that the information before is correct. This family does not have a high level of need. So this wouldn't be a family. If we received 5 COEs on the same day, this would not be a family that had the immediate contact. They may wait till the next day or farther into the 5 days contact. This family, you can see, needs food, looking at school issues like transportation, where maybe we could help connect them with the correct services for education purposes. And then these are notes that are relevant to students. So this is an OSY who's interested in enrolling in school. This was a re-interview for a student. And then in our project, we have service providers assigned to different areas. And so we know that this top COE that was completed, this is the service provider that would be assigned to that area. And that service provider gets a notice of the COE status and the priorities with it. Just scroll down here. And then this final status is just shows that the contact has been made with the family and we can just close that out. So this form here just helps us, like Jessica was talking earlier, evaluate those students ahead of time before they're even in our project to determine the service delivery. So this is actually within the app. If you're wanting some fast data, you can see that within our project, since we've started using this form, that we've had, you know, a certain level of 5 priority, 4 priority and such, which just kind of helps us look at our project as a whole and evaluate what the level of need is in our project. If you look at this first box, you can see number 6. You can actually insert resources as well. So one of our recruiters would be able to go in there and click on that item and review the NRGs for the McKinney-Vento to determine if this student would actually be considered homeless. Then we can see over here in the third box that of the families that we've completed this form with, that these are the items that the families needed. So the first one may be like those basic living necessities, food, assistance with utilities, assistance with enrollment. Maybe they just aren't sure who to connect with the school district, so we give them those resources to connect, or maybe the transportation listed on the one. The third one indicates how long they plan to be in the area. So if we have a student who doesn't have a high need, but we know that they're planning to be in the area less than a month, then that's, you know, one we would definitely want to consider reaching out to, even if they may not be a high level priority. And then the fourth box just indicates the items that they've listed as needed for the family. As you can see, there's some areas where we don't have a lot of responses. since we are a new project, we've just started identifying some things we need to have in place in our project. And so you'll see some forms have a lot of entries, and there are other forms that have very few, just because we've either switched from another system and joined in a Connect team, or something new that we've just identified in needing. So this report here, our coordinator receives once a month. So they're able to evaluate how the services are being followed up with after. So what happens is the service provider will go in and they'll update the status saying that they made the contact with the family. And then they'll continually add that documentation and follow up with that until it's completed. And then whoever has access to the management portion of this form would go in and indicate the final status. So maybe they weren't able to make contact because the family had moved, or maybe the contact was completed, or the, whatever the case may be with that specific COE. Then what we use also in IDNR is the recruiter log. And so this just lists a lot of information talking about like the areas the recruiter visit, the activities that they're completing, who they're talking to, if they're talking to families, if they're talking to schools, if they're talking to community agencies. And so we're really able to look at that and look at specific areas of where that information is coming from. Once again, this report, the recruiters receive weekly and the coordinator receives monthly. So they're able to evaluate it and look at the areas that's being served, maybe some areas that could use some extra attention. So also our recruiters sometimes assist in other projects. So you'll see here we're ESU 9. And so when they do their entry, most entries are under this, but if they're working with another project as well, they could add that. And so then that just shows some of our collaboration within our state. And then if you look here, you can see, so this shows the dates. So we can go through and identify dates where IDNR service or provisions were, maybe we had a high level, maybe we have some months where there was less. So trying to find the trends in there. Now, as you can see on the next one, the activities, who are they visiting? So this recruiter visited an elementary school. This was a school district. We have some where they're K through 12. And so they're seeing staff within that whole district. And so families, then just IDNR work. So that may be office time. Nonprofit educational facilities, that may be Head Start, or maybe this family or this recruiter visited the social services to try to help find referrals or resources in the community. And then on the next one, on number 3, so we like to identify if it's an initial contact. We like to know if we're making those new connections in our communities. So this is really important when we're looking at data at the whole year and seeing who we're repeat visiting and then who the new connections are. We also list what type of activity. So are they going in person? Are they making virtual contacts? Is it email? Is it a phone call? Whatever the case may be. And then we kind of look and see which we're getting the best results out of, and maybe we could implement maybe virtual settings into an area that's farther for us to get to. And then you can see again, this is listed specifically. So this is a specific preschool or a certain program that was visited. And so this is just kind of an overview of a few of the things that we do for recruiters. Also, this is an important one. This is, so the ages that COEs were completed for. You can see NAs, so those are the ones that are going to be those community visits, or maybe someone who didn't qualify, items like that. As well, over here in the corner, you can see the actual, what they actually did. So this recruiter went and placed a flyer at a couple different agencies, or visited with a family who's already in the program to see if they had any referrals or some community programs. That's good, that's COEs. And then this is the counties. Because we have our recruiters assigned by our counties within our project. This here, you can see the map location of an activity. So when our recruiters go out on the Connect Team app, they can actually pin a location. So if they are out at a farm and they've made a connection, they can pin that location. So the next person going out could use that information. Or we could actually pull it into this report and look at the specific area. So maybe they visited 10 farms within a 20-mile radius and looking at that information and seeing if we're getting COEs or maybe if we're missing information somewhere. Then again, this is just the recruiter's notes. And then we have the final status of what that looks like. And we use that we review that monthly, and then recruiters can view that as often as they need to, because they have access to all of their entries. And so then this is just on the app again. It's that simplified data that if somebody's looking at this, they could just go in, and maybe we have a recruiter who's trying to meet a goal, and he or she's like, oh, I've only visited however many schools. And that's only like, maybe my goal is 10% of my contacts as schools. And so then they know that at a quick look that's 8%. So that'd be an area they want to increase. And then once again, the counties, because that's important for us, because that's how our recruiters are assigned. And then this is an example of the report that everybody receives. And so one of the things that we do within our project is, as a data specialist, I run a report from MIS 2000 that shows all of our newly accepted COEs.
Evelyn, you have a couple questions in the chat if you have a minute.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, does a recruiter enter all this? So it's whichever, actually. So you can use it on your phone or you can use it on a computer. Most of ours, I think our recruiters are doing it on their computers. You'll see when we get to the services side, we have similar forms, and a lot of them do it on their phones when they're actually at a visit. So it just kind of depends how you prefer. Okay. And so with those COEs, the way we get that information to our support service staff is I complete this form, and then our service providers receive that information for that new COE. That just helps. It kind of goes along with that earlier, determining who we see first and who's new to our areas and what areas they're new to. And this is a new form that we've just started using. So you'll see there's not a ton of data. We switched from a different system. So that just shows that priority level that I showed you in the last form. And of course, parent information, student information, and the area where the student resides, and then the contact information for that family. I'll scroll down because a lot of it's blocked out because it's just student information.
And you have 2 more questions.
Okay, let me get through this just real quick. And then the address, the town that they're in, because we assign by service providers, by school districts, and by towns, depending on the services they provide. And then any comments that would come through from the recruiter. And then these are our final status. So you can see here that on this first one, there was a visit completed. And so then that is complete. We don't need to do anything further with that. And then the second one, a visit's been scheduled. So we just consider that in progress. It's not yet completed. And then you can once again see the notes. So this is where we identified that the visit was complete, looking at the initial assessment form, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, questions? So The way we determine, the question is who determines PFS? So that work, it's just on the information that's given to me. So I actually go into our database and I'll enter. So if we have a family who's newly accepted into our program, so they've had that move within that last 12 months. And then, so if they're homeless, then when I get this information, I go into our database and I mark that. And then that automatically makes that student a PFS. So it's just entering the data that we receive that makes that determination. And our recruiters don't provide services. If they have a family that's in need, maybe they might help them with some community agencies to help them get that initial need, but it's just an allowable activity that they may help them with. But if we get those, like I talked about earlier, those 4 to 5 stars, then that goes to our coordinator, and our coordinator may determine that we need to send a staff out because this family has a very high level of need. The recruiters actually receive their reports once a week, and they can also view any entries they have on the app. So when they view that entry on the app, that actually has the status as well. So they can go in there and see the statuses that are listed over here on these side columns. I'm not sure what you mean on the manager fields. So how Connect Team works is you can actually create your report with any information that you need to collect. So ours is set up specifically for what we need when our recruiters go out. But if you're looking for certain information, you can enter that and they'd be able to deliver you that information from the time they make that first contact with the family. So it could be like the example that Jessica gave earlier. Some of that information could be collected. It's just however you want to set up your own forms. Our system the question is if the recruiter receive them weekly or automatically through Connect Team. So the Connect Team automatically sends a weekly report. And so it takes out that middle person of having to do that job. Like I said, they're also able to view that anytime they want to as well. But it is very nice for them to automatically receive those reports. You're welcome. Okay, so within this new COE log, I'll just do a quick little. Okay. All right, was there any questions with the COE log? Because that's new to us. And so you can see here, this is the information. Once again, it's just reiterating the same information that we collect that's important to our project. And then this would be an example of the report that the recruiter receives weekly and that our coordinator receives monthly. You can just see that this one's, what we showed earlier within the app. So once our service providers have made their initial contacts with the family, they schedule the initial assessment and they go out and they complete that with the family. And so then that's just more follow-up information with the family. So when they complete this, it automatically uploads into the database and I'm able to go in and I can update that into MIS 2000 as soon as this is complete. So maybe we have a service provider who is out 5 counties away from us. And as soon as they enter it, I can actually go into it and retrieve that information. So there's no real delay in trying to get that connection made. We do collect a large amount of information, so I probably won't go through all of this. It is linked in the presentation on the Whova app, so you'd be able to go in and look at all this information. But this just collects who are our students, when are we going to visit them. And that helps us stay on track with like our timeline. So are we making that contact with our families within the 5 days? Are we stuff like that to make sure we're meeting all of our requirements? How is our contact being made? So we do have this initial assessment because we do use this form for if we have like a change within the family. So it's not just always for our initial contact. And so then this is permissions. Do we have permission for whatever this question is? Student of the attendance. So this verifies that our students are at a certain school district. So the service provider is verifying through the family, and I verify through the school, just so that we're receiving the same information. Scroll down. And so then these are just some notes. And so like, there's no problems with this family, they're doing well. So we know that that will place them within a certain contact for our service providers. If we have a family who doesn't have a PFS or an at-risk status, they've reported no problems, the family is doing well, we're not going to visit them once a week. They'll just have a different contact status than our other families who have higher needs. And we do have this section for documentation. That could be anything, maybe this student here wears glasses. So maybe the school had sent a form home with the parents saying the student failed their vision exam, and they would want to send that to an eye doctor. And so we'd be able to take that off here and send that to them. We do have a release of information that we add in here as well, that we collect at every initial assessment. And as you can see in here, when we come through the entries, you can see that number 4 was updated in MIS 2000, and then that's archived and is completely finished. And the third one from the bottom, there's no updates. So there was nothing with this student that we didn't receive with that initial contact from the recruiter. I know this is a lot of information in a short amount of time, so feel free to ask questions. Once again, this is just that data analysis, and this is very easy on the app. So I'll show you in another section, but this is just one click. You view the entries, and then you can view all this information. And it's very simple for easy analysis. And then this report goes out to our service provider, so they know that this information has been updated in MIS 2000. So that's like that quality control on my end saying, this is the steps that I've completed, and that our coordinator would be able to view all this information and make sure that it looks accurate as well. So once we've completed an initial assessment, they do an evaluation of the student's educational needs. And if they determine that a student has educational needs, then they come and they complete this request for instructional services. And so this is very similar to the same process as when we have a new student and the support service goes out. This just shows, it's taking a minute to load, sorry about that, who identified the need. So the student's grade, of course, that information. What level of risk is this student? Is this a student who is a PFS or an at-risk, or just a standard enrolled student? We have a very large school district in our area. It's about half of our kids. And so we actually track their information independently as well. And so—
Sorry, Evelyn,
yes.
Are you showing your screen? We're looking at the quality control. That's the one you're trying to show?
No,
or were you back
it
and
should look like
connecting?
the process.
Oh, okay.
Does it say Tango?
No, it's not in Tango.
Really?
It's
What I'm seeing is Tango.
oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, I wish
Sorry.
well, it says like Tango, and then this is like Connect Team, and we're on number 3, like review column.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Maybe there's a delay somewhere.
Yeah, weird.
And so then this just shows the areas where we've identified that the student could use some support. So the student is math, the student's ELA, science, social studies. And this information is information I collected. You could come over here and see this is information that I entered specifically for requests, because I received the students' transcripts and report cards and state assessment scores. And so this is from that, so receiving that information and saying this student maybe failed or is at risk of failing a certain course. And then of course the schools that they're at, because that determines which service provider it is. And then we always detail who is requesting the service so we can make that contact later. So my notes actually in here would say my name and then via report card or transcript. So they know specifically where to look at that information. And then once again, that documentation piece. Sometimes we'll have staff upload a copy of an updated report card. Maybe it was at the beginning of the semester and the student was struggling. And then they go back out to actually complete this visit and they're up to a B, they were just missing some assignments. So then we can determine if they actually need instructional services or maybe it's something we just monitor during the time. Then you can see how this looks on this end. So this third one down, this would be a service provider who has made contact. So they've maybe contacted the school, perhaps it's a preschool readiness student, a 3 to 5, so they've contacted the family. At this point, they haven't provided a service, they're just working on that communication piece. And then the fifth one down, the green one, says ongoing services. And so that just means that we've followed through with this referral and it's a student we've actually determined needs services. And that's where their current status is. And this is just, again, that student data. This is where most of our referrals are coming from. So it looks like third grade. Third grade seems to be where a lot of our students are needing support. And then who are the students we're receiving the referrals for? You know, PFS students or at-risk students and such. And then what services are being requested. One thing we've really identified with this is a really good training area for our staff. So if we have, obviously, ELA is a big request, then we can make sure that our service providers are, you know, getting good continuing education and feeling like they're able to deliver those services well in those areas. And we also added summer school that helps with our summer school planning, because we get information from schools and families, and that kind of lets it know from all areas where they think that might be beneficial. And then again, the school of residence. We do have school of residence and attendance because that helps determine our service provider for 3 to 5 school readiness students as well. Okay, so that's the instructional service request. And then this is another report, and this is one that the service provider receives once a week and the coordinator receives once a month. We have that pretty consistent so that we have continual quality control to make sure that our information is being updated and that we aren't having any students who aren't being served. So the next is I contact the schools for the new students in our program. And so in this, I collect our students' needs. If it's a new student and it's not during the summer, so if I had a new student today, I would also collect any grades that they've accumulated if they've been in school for a period of time, and also their assessment scores. If it's a new student who's just arrived we have some that'll move in from out of the country, we just usually try to find some information that we could enter, but not everybody has it. So this is just some examples of the forms I use to collect that information. The first one is a letter that I send to each school district, letting them know that we have a new student that qualifies for the migrant program, and that with that, they categorically qualify for free meals. And so this just lists, when it's filled out, it's their name, their grade, and their birth date. So they have that information to match into their database. And to actually send this letter and this form together, I have found that if I send this information as just the second form, that the nutrition staff isn't always getting the information they need. So then I just send this information together in 2 separate forms, and it's worked well to get it distributed to education stuff and to nutrition stuff. And you can see the form on the right just asks a lot of that demographic information. So the student name, the sex, date of birth, all that information I have auto-filled from my reports from MIS 2000 when I have several students at one time. And that just fills in each section of the information that we've already collected. You can see it has their eligibility information. That's helped schools know how long a student may qualify for certain services based on migrant enrollment. And then this goes in and it collects all that information that we need for the MDE. So like if the student has a disability, if the student is an EL student. One thing we've identified that's been helpful is if they are receiving any other academic services. So are they a Title I student? Are they, getting extra support in the classroom? And then the other questions. So low performance, is this a student that's deficient with their grades? Lacking parent involvement, McKinney-Vento eligible. So this is one I actually fill out if we have a student who, through the other information that I've received, if the student's eligible for McKinney-Vento, I'll actually complete yes, so that the school district is aware that we've identified the student as being homeless, that's something they could pass on to their liaison for that information as well. So then all this information, once it's received, is updated into MIS 2000. And then when I receive those forms back, I enter that. But then it also shows again that I do an instructional service request. So there's many times throughout the year, multiple times, that we're reassessing those needs for those students to see if they need either support or instructional service requests. And it comes from many ways. So like the school, report cards, parents, our service providers. And then we take this information, we have a weekly meeting, and we evaluate where our service providers are already placed. And depending on the priority status of the student, if it's somebody we can get in, if it's somebody we need to put on a wait list, kind of what we do with that information once we receive it. So this is that information we review. So we list all of our students, our PFS and our at-risk students, and then also the areas that they have not been served. So we can look at this, and this is original data for our whole school, for our whole program. And then you can see these bottom tabs. Keeps trying to highlight that. So you can see the second tab, there we go, is Wheeler Central Elementary. And so we break it down per each school. So we can go to each school in our region that we serve and identify how many PFS we have there, how many at-risk we have there, and how many haven't been served or who have been served and what age ranges. This is just another example. And so you can see over here in the notes section in the comment that it says that they'll be providing instructional services. They discuss that with the principal and the counselor, that the student could use support. Then you can come over here and see that, yes, indeed, this student has received those instructional support services. And so one thing we monitor as we're going through is our termination dates. And so this student right here that's highlighted with this arrow, you can see that it's a student who's receiving 3 to 5 school readiness services, and their eligibility ends in August. And so we start having that conversation to see if this is a student that we'd be able to get into a preschool, or if there's any other services available in the student's community to be able to provide those services. If we've identified that there's not, and we need to provide those services, we go through the process of the continuation of services request. We haven't had any so far this year. So instead of doing the report, I actually did the Connect team form side. And so this is what a form looks like when a staff member goes to enter this information. And this is a phone view. So what it would look like if somebody's using it on a tablet or on their phone. And so it's just the basic information that we need to collect for the student. Information so we can identify them in the database. So they would enter their date of termination when their eligibility ends. This is a detailed account of why they feel this student still needs services. They've looked in the community, this is who they've talked to, they've identified any agency that might be able to provide that services and identified that they're unable to provide them at this time. So we have that detailed account of why we're justifying we have the ability to continue those services for that student. And then this identifies how long they should receive those services. Is it through the end of the semester? Is it through the end of the year? And then of course that would be explained up in that section above. And then we would list how long do we expect these services to last? So maybe it's through the end of the semester. What does the semester look like for that student? So maybe it may be in May, or maybe that's in December. So that's that form. And so we evaluate that on a weekly basis as well. When we have a student, this is a new form that we've just started implementing. When we have a student that's been referred for instructional services, they are completing initial assessments. So that's going back in and meeting with maybe the parents or the student and collecting that information on specific areas and then developing those timelines on how long the student will be served. And then they give an estimate on the materials that may be needed and then when they're going to reassess that student for needs. I'll just find some relevant information here. So we ask if the instructional services are going to be provided, the risk factors that they have. So this student all of these students have been in school readiness. So this is a service provider who's going out and evaluating our 3 to 5 students who aren't in school, seeing what services they need. And then these are the support services. So materials, transportation, things like that, that we'll also be providing on top of the instructional services. And then we'll reassess the student in May and we'll see if the student's making gains and we feel that they're ready for school. Is it a student who could use some support in summer school? Just looking at that information. Once again, this is a report and the service provider receives this and the coordinator receives it as well. This is a tool that we are working to implement. So each entry that a staff member makes, you can actually create into this paper form that can be printed and given to the family, to the school, whatever the case may be. So everybody's kind of on the same page and has that same information. So this student here, if it were a school age student, when you make that evaluation, you could take this form and you could give it to the guidance counselor, you could give a copy to the parent, everybody who would benefit from having that information from that evaluation to know what the services look like and how long they're going to be implemented. Then this is just a variety of some data forms that I send out. I already showed when we have a new student what that looks like, but I also have some that are similar for different times throughout the year. So this is what I send out at the end of the first semester. No, this is the first one. So this is their needs. So this is the first one I send out in September. It does a couple different things. It lets me know that the student is still enrolled. I do a verification right after 9/1 that each student is there, but it also lets me know that they're still there and that they haven't moved. So that's been really helpful. And then also, again, it just lists their needs that they may have, and which of course identifies their risk category. The letter on the left, I actually send during the summer. This form lets nutrition staff know that with the categorically qualifying students that they qualify 30 days into the school year. And so I send this form based on the previous year information with the certain dates that apply so that they know at least that first month of school that these students qualify, and it gives them that chance to turn in a new application if maybe they don't qualify for MEP anymore. And then this letter on the right is the form I send usually in that first week of August as school is starting. And so this is a complete list in each school district of students that they have that qualify for migrant at that point. Oh, Carrie, I seen your so the status reports on the Connect team reports is actually something you can add. There's some features where if you're looking at the administrative side, there's a little plus on the far right-hand corner. You can actually add like people chips so they get notifications or statuses. There's several different things that you can actually add to the reports that are on top of the fields that auto-generate. In this letter as well, both of them, I include the password for the last school year and the new password for the next school year, because this will go to our staff who are receiving that digital information as well. And so I want to make sure that they have that information several different ways. So they're always able to access those reports that I send them. This is at the end of the first semester when I'm collecting transcripts and grades from students. I've kind of revised this form. We've had some changes in some information that we're collecting. And so you can see there's just checklists for the information that they're submitting. So maybe it's their maps, maybe it's their ACT, the information that they're including to meet this top section for the assessment data and transcripts and report cards. And then again, it reevaluates students' needs. You know, has something happened? Has something changed since the last time this information was submitted? Or if they've transitioned to maybe an alternative education, or if they're now homeschooled, which we've had happen. And then again, it still verifies that they're still enrolled, because sometimes we have that gap of information and we'll have a student who's gone for several weeks and we didn't know that. And so this just helps us with our enrollment for our students as well. So one of the big forms we use is our change of data form in Connect team. As you can see here, it lists all the information. One thing we've started recently using it for is just having a quality control on if our database is up to date. So you can see here on this third to the final row, it says MIS 2000. So this is if I've updated this information in MIS 2000. And if I haven't, then why not? And then if a student moved outside of our project, even in state or out of state, if the Move 6 notice was completed or if it was not. And then the final status of this entry. So you can see this entry here on 2/27, this family moved out of state. Their enrollment in MIS 2000 was updated and an M6 notice was sent. So at that point, that entry is archived and there's nothing further that needs done with that. And you can make notes, and the person who enters this entry would be able to see this so that they'd be able to make corrections or add any information that may be relevant. That is all the information that I have to deliver at this point. Is there any questions? It's a lot of information in a small amount of time. We actually have several other forms that we use as well, but there wasn't time to include them all in here.
Evelyn,
Thank you, Evelyn. Maybe if you want to stop the recording so we get more questions.
Yes, give me just a second.
Where are you?
Oh, sorry, my settings bar.
Mine are all over the place. I couldn't either.
There we go. Stop recording.